Most data engineers only find out about pipeline failures when someone from finance asks why their dashboard is stuck on last week. But what if you could spot and fix issues before they cause chaos? Today, we'll show you how to architect monitoring in Microsoft Fabric so your pipelines stay healthy, your team stays calm, and your business doesn't get blindsided by bad data. The secret is system thinking. Stick around to learn how the pros avoid pipeline surprises. Seeing the whole board, 4 pillars of Fabric pipeline monitoring. If you've ever looked at your Fabric pipeline and felt like it's a mystery box, join the club. The pipeline runs, your dashboards update, everyone's happy until suddenly something slips. A critical report is empty, and you're left sifting through logs, trying to piece together what just went wrong. This is the reality for most data teams. The pattern looks a lot like this. You only find out about an issue when someone else finds it first, and by then there's already a meeting on your calendar. It's not that you lack alerts or dashboards. In fact, you might have plenty, maybe even a wall of graphs and status icons. But the funny thing is, most monitoring tools catch your attention after something has already broken. We all know what it's like to watch a dashboard light up after a failure. Impressive, but too late to help you. The struggle is real because most monitoring setups keep us reactive, not proactive. You patch one problem, but you know another will pop up somewhere else. And the craziest part is this loop just keeps spinning even as your system gets more sophisticated. You can add more monitoring tools, set more alerts, make things look prettier, but it still feels like a game of whack-a-mole. Why? Because focusing on the tools alone ignores the bigger system they're supposed to support. The truth is, Microsoft Fabric offers plenty of built-in monitoring features. Dig into the official docs and you'll see things like run history, resource metrics, diagnostic logs, and more. On paper, you've got coverage. In practice, though, most teams use these features in isolation. You get fragments of the story, plenty of data, not much insight. Let's get real. Without a system approach, it's like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces. You might notice long pipeline durations, but unless you're tracking the right dependencies, you'll never know which part actually needs a fix. Miss a single detail and the whole structure gets shaky. Microsoft's own documentation hints at this. Features alone don't catch warning signs. It's how you put them together that makes the difference. That's why seasoned engineers talk about the 4 pillars of effective Fabric pipeline monitoring. If you want more than a wall of noise, you need a connected system built around performance metrics, error logging, data lineage, and recovery plans. These aren't just technical requirements. They're the foundation for understanding, diagnosing, and surviving real-world issues. Take performance metrics. It's tempting to just monitor if pipelines are running, but that's the bare minimum. The real value comes from tracking throughput, latency, and system resource consumption. Notice an unexpected spike, and you can get ahead of backlogs before they snowball. Now layer on error logging. Detailed error logs don't just tell you something failed, they help you zero in on what failed and why. Miss this, and you're stuck reading vague alerts that eat up time and patience. But here's where a lot of teams stumble. They might have great metrics and logs, but nothing connecting detection to action. If all you do is collect logs and send alerts, great. You know where the fires are, but not how to put them out. That brings up recovery plans. Fabric isn't just about knowing there's a problem. The platform supports automating recovery processes. For example, you can trigger workflows that retry failed steps, quarantine suspect dataset rows, or reroute jobs automatically. Ignore this and you'll end up with more alerts, more noise, and the same underlying problems. The kind of monitoring that actually helps you sleep at night is one where finding an error leads directly to fixing it. Data lineage is the final pillar. It's the piece that often gets overlooked, but it's vital as your system grows. When you can map where data comes from, how it's transformed, and who relies on it, you're not just tracking the pipeline, you're tracking the flow of information across your whole environment. Imagine you missed a corrupt batch upstream. Without lineage, the error just ripples out into reports and dashboards, and you're left cleaning up the mess days later. But with proper lineage tracking, you spot those dependencies and address root causes instead of symptoms. It doesn't take long to see how missing even one of these 4 pillars leaves you exposed. Error logs without a recovery workflow just mean more alerts. Having great metrics but no data lineage means, something's slow, but you don't know which teams or processes are affected. Get these 4 pieces working together and you move from scrambling when someone shouts to preventing that shout in the first place. You shift from patchwork fixes to a connected system that flags weak spots before they break. Here's the key. When performance metrics, error logs, data lineage, and recovery plans operate as a single system, you build a living, breathing, monitoring solution. It adapts, spots trends, and helps your team focus on improvement, not firefighting. Everyone wants to catch problems before they hit business users. You just need the right pillars in place. So, what does top tier performance monitoring actually look like in Fabric? How do you move beyond surface level stats and start spotting trouble before it avalanches through your data environment? Performance metrics with teeth surfacing issues before users do. If you've ever pushed a change to production and the next thing you hear is a director asking why yesterday's data hasn't landed, you're not alone. The truth is, most data pipelines give the illusion of steady performance until someone at the business side calls out a missing number or a half-empty dashboard. It's one of the most frustrating parts of working in analytics. Everything looks green from your side, and then a user, always the user, spots a problem before your monitoring does. The root of this problem is the way teams often track the wrong metrics, or worse, they only track the basics. If your dashboard shows total pipeline runs and failure counts, congratulations, you have exactly the same insights as every other shop running Fabric out of the box. But that only scratches the surface. When you limit yourself to high-level stats, you miss lag spikes that slowly build up, or those weird periods when a single activity sits in a queue twice as long as usual. Then a bottleneck forms, and by the time you notice, you're running behind on your SLAs. Fabric, to its credit, surfaces a lot of numbers. There are run durations, data processed volumes, row counts, resource stats, and logs on just about everything. But it's easy to get lost. The question isn't which metrics does Fabric record, it's which metrics actually tip you off before things start breaking downstream. Staring at a wall of historical averages or pipeline completion times doesn't get you ahead of the curve. If a specific data copy takes twice as long or your resource pool maxes out, no summary graph is going to tap you on the shoulder to warn that a pileup is coming. There's a big difference between checking if your pipeline completed and knowing if it kept pace with demand. Think of it like managing a web server. You wouldn't just check if the server is powered on. You want to know if requests are being served in a timely way, if page load times are spiking, or if the server's CPU is getting pinned. The same logic applies in Fabric. The real value comes from looking at metrics like throughput, how much data is moving, activity-specific durations, which steps are slow, queue durations, where jobs stack up, failure rates over time, and detailed resource utilization stats during runs. According to Microsoft's own best practices, you should keep a watchful eye on metrics such as pipeline and activity duration, queue times, failure rates at the activity level, and resource usage, especially if you're pushing the boundaries of your compute pool. Activity duration helps you highlight if a particular ETL step is suddenly crawling. Queue time is the early sign your resources aren't keeping up with demand. Resource usage can reveal if you're under-allocating memory or hitting unexpected compute spikes, both of which can slow or stall your pipelines long before an outright failure. Here's where most dashboards let people down: static thresholds. Hard-coded alerts like raise an incident if a pipeline takes more than 30 minutes sound good on paper, but pipelines rarely behave that consistently in a real-world enterprise. One big file, a busy hour, or a temporary surge in demand, and bang, the alert fires, even if it's a one-off. But watch what happens when you implement dynamic thresholds. Now, instead of fixed limits, your monitoring tools track historical runs and flag significant deviations from norms. That means your alerts fire for true anomalies, not just expected fluctuations. Over time, you get fewer false positives and better signals about real risks. Setting up this sort of intelligent alerting isn't rocket science these days. You can wire up Fabric pipeline metrics to Power BI dashboards, log analytics workspaces, or even send outputs to logic apps for richer automation. It's worth using tags and metadata in your pipeline definitions to tie specific metrics back to business-critical data sources or reporting layers. That way, if a high-priority pipeline starts creeping past its throughput baseline, you get informed before a monthly board meeting gets stalled for missing numbers. A practical early warning system means you're not waiting around for red failure icons. Your team hears about pipeline flakiness before the business feels the impact. One of the overlooked strategies here is routing alerts to the right people. Instead of a giant shared mailbox, you can push notifications straight to the teams who own the affected data or dashboards. Your developers want details, not broad messages. Your analysts want to know if something will break their refresh cadence. Microsoft's monitoring stack makes role-specific routing much easier if you take the time to structure your alerts. When you have well-tuned alerting, you are freed up to focus on improvements, not just firefighting. The goal isn't to create noise, it's about actionable information. With dynamic baselines and targeted alerts, you move from being reactive, why is this broken, to proactive, let's fix this before it becomes a problem. Suddenly, you're in control of your data pipeline, not the other way around. And as your organization leans more and more on self-serve analytics and daily refreshes, that control pays off in fewer surprises and smoother operations. Of course, even with all the smartest metrics in place, pipelines don't always run clean. The big question isn't just how you spot a problem early, it's what you do when you find out something actually broke. That's where error logging and smart recovery workflows become not just handy, but essential. From error logs to self-healing, building recovery that works. You've spotted the error. Now the fun begins. The mistake most teams make is thinking the job ends here. Modern data pipelines log everything, failed steps, odd values, unexpected terminations. But what actually happens with those piles of logs? Too often they just sit there waiting for the monthly post-mortem or the next all-hands crisis review. Usually someone scrolls through row after row of read failed messages, cross-references, timestamps, tries to reconstruct the sequence, and then, if you're lucky, documents a root cause that gets filed away and forgotten. Day to day, the logs are more warning light than roadmap. This isn't just a bandwidth problem, it's a process problem. If your only response to a pipeline stalling out is to restart and keep your fingers crossed, you aren't running a monitoring system, you're rolling the dice. A single bad file, a corrupted row, or an accidental schema update, and suddenly you're staring at a half-loaded warehouse at 2 a.m. The longer you rely on manual fixes, the more painful every failure becomes. And with Fabric, where workloads and dependencies keep multiplying, manual recovery simply doesn't scale. This is where automated recovery has a chance to change the rules. Fabric's ecosystem, unlike some older ETL stacks, actually lets you take error detection and tie it straight to action. It's not science fiction. Through pipeline triggers and logic apps, you can set up workflows that respond the second a specific error shows up in the logs. Instead of paging an engineer to restart a job, the pipeline can pivot mid-flight. Let's get concrete for a second. Imagine you've got a nightly data load into Fabric and validation logic flags a batch of incoming rows as garbage, maybe bad dates, maybe mangled characters. In a manual world, the error gets logged and someone reviews it hours later. But with Fabric, you wire up automated steps. Failing records are immediately quarantined, the pipeline retries the data load, and a notification zooms straight into your team chat channel. Maybe the retry succeeds on the second attempt, maybe it needs a deeper fix, but either way, the whole process happens before a human even considers unzipping a log file. That's the difference between triage and treatment. Microsoft's guidance here is pretty direct. Do not rely only on error notifications. Integrate error detection with automated recovery mechanisms for better resilience. They aren't saying emails and alert banners are useless. They're saying you have to close the loop. The clever part is connecting this failed to here's how we fix it. So when you set up playbooks for common failures, invalid file formats, timeouts, credential errors, you're building muscle memory for your monitoring workflow. Over time, you see the long-term win, faster recoveries, fewer escalations, and a logbook full of incidents that got handled before screenshots started flying. Now, integrating error logs with automation tools in Fabric isn't just about convenience. It's about shaving minutes or hours off your mean time to resolution. If you set up logic apps or power automate flows to handle common fixes, you start shrinking the after-hours alert noise and breathing room appears on your team calendar. The teams who take this approach report less manual intervention, less missed sleep, and importantly, better audit trails. Every automated fix is logged and time-stamped, so you don't find out after the fact that a pipeline quietly dropped and reprocessed a batch without any human eyes on it. That's confidence, not just convenience. Let's talk nuance for a second, because not all errors wear the same uniform. There's system-level monitoring catching things like failed runs, resource starvation, or timeouts. This keeps the pipeline itself robust. Then there's data quality monitoring, spotting weird outliers, missing fields, or far-off aggregates. With Fabric, you can tackle both. Use activity level monitors to catch the system glitches and then bolt on data profiling steps, optionally using Synapse data flows or external quality tools to ensure the data moving through the pipeline is as trustworthy as the pipeline itself. Marrying both layers means you're not just keeping your jobs running, you're making sure what lands at the end actually fits business expectations. And if something does manage to both break the pipeline and pollute the dataset, automated recovery flows still have your back. They can roll back changes, block downstream outputs, or launch additional validation steps as needed. Maybe the biggest payoff here is psychological, not just technical. When your monitoring system is rigged for self-healing, your team moves from panic and patch mode to detect and improve mode. The next time there's a failure, instead of opening with, "Why didn't we catch this?" the question becomes, how can we automate the next fix? You get out of the whack-a-mole rhythm and start building continuous improvement into your data operations. That's the difference between just running pipelines and running a true data service. So with resilient recovery in place, the problem shifts. You're not just fighting the last failure, you're looking ahead to scale. As your Fabric pipelines multiply and your data workloads get heavier, how do you design dashboards, track data lineage, and keep all this monitoring easy to use across growing teams and shifting priorities? Scaling up dashboards, data lineage, and the road to resilience. If you've ever poured hours into crafting a dashboard only to watch it gather dust, or worse, find out that nobody opens it after the first week, the irony isn't lost on you. It's surprisingly common in Fabric projects. You build visuals, hook up all the right metrics, and hope your team will use the insights to keep pipelines healthy. But the reality is dashboards fall into two traps. They're either ignored because people are too busy or too confused, or they become so crammed with metrics that the signal is buried in noise. You get the wow factor on day one, and after that, alerts just pile up unread. That becomes a real problem as Fabric environments grow. It's not just the number of pipelines going up, it's the complexity. More data sets, more dependencies, more business processes relying on each data set. Old monitoring approaches can't keep pace. A dashboard that worked for a handful of interconnected pipelines won't scale when you have dozens or hundreds of jobs firing at different times with different data and more teams involved. Pretty soon, metrics drift out of sync, lineage diagrams get tangled, and you start missing early warning signs. It's not sabotage, it's just entropy. Surprises slip through the cracks, and tracking down root causes turns into a week-long scavenger hunt. The detail that often gets overlooked is lineage. With Fabric, every new data source and pipeline creates another thread in the larger web. Think about it. When you're dealing with transformation after transformation, who's making sure you can trace data all the way from source through every fork, merge, and enrichment out to the final report? Ideally, Lineage gives you an immediate map. Where did this value originate? What steps shaped it? And what other assets depend on it? This isn't a nice to have as your system scales. If you lose that thread, a single corrupt feed has the power to ripple through dozens of assets before anyone notices. Worse, you end up relying on tribal knowledge, hoping someone still remembers how widget sales staging ultimately rolls up into the quarterly dashboard. Imagine this. An upstream data source picks up a malformed record. The immediate pipeline absorbs it, but the issue stays invisible until 2 days later, someone notices numbers in a board report aren't adding up. If you don't have lineage, you're piecing together job histories by hand, hoping to spot the point of failure. With solid lineage in place, you can trace that value across pipelines, immediately see which datasets and reports touched it, and lock down the blast radius before any wrong decisions get made off bad data. Time saved, reputation saved. Now, Microsoft's own documentation doesn't mince words. Modular dashboards that surface only what's relevant for each role, not just one size fits all, make a real difference. Engineers want granular stats and failure diagnostics. Analysts care about data freshness and delivery SLAs. Managers want summaries and incident timelines. If you try to satisfy everyone with the same wall of numbers, engagement just drops. By segmenting dashboards and alerts by audience, you boost the chances that each team actually uses what you publish. You can use workspaces, views, and even custom Power BI dashboards to keep things tight and focused. As monitoring needs scale, design choices that look trivial early on start to matter in a big way. Tagging becomes essential. Attach clear, durable tags or metadata to every pipeline, dataset, and data flow. This isn't just about naming conventions, it's about making metric aggregation, alert routing, and access control work automatically as your catalog gets bigger. With proper tagging, you can automate which alerts go to which team. Need to wake up just the data engineering crew when an ingestion job fails? Simple. Want to pipeline metrics for just your high priority reports? Also easy. Skipping this step leads to alert fatigue or worse, missing crucial signals because the right person never sees the alert. You also can't ignore the storage aspect. Long-term monitoring, especially in big Fabric environments, means you'll drown in logs if you don't archive efficiently. Set up automated retention and archiving policies so you keep historical logs accessible enough for audits and trend analysis, but don't overload your systems or make dashboard queries grind to a halt. This type of forward thinking lets you scale without backpedaling later to clean up old mistakes. When you combine data lineage, targeted dashboards, and automated alerting, something interesting happens. You create a feedback loop. Now, when a threshold or anomaly is hit, your monitoring points right to the relevant lineage, and you immediately know what's downstream and upstream of the issue. Errors become isolated faster. Improvements feed right back into the dashboard and lineage visuals, so each problem makes your monitoring system a little smarter for next time. It's not about one piece doing all the work. It's every piece. Dashboards, lineage mapping, alert automation, log management, pushing toward continuous incremental gain. As Fabric becomes the backbone for more of your business logic, this loop is what keeps things from buckling under the weight. The payoff is simple. Self-healing, resilient pipelines aren't just for tech unicorns. If your monitoring system matures as your environment grows, becoming modular, lineage aware, and designed for scale, you can handle outages and data quirks as part of daily business, not just as firefighting exercises. The next challenge is connecting the dots, aligning metrics, recovery steps, and dashboards so that your entire Fabric setup acts like a living learning system. If you've ever watched a pipeline fail silently and had to piece together what happened long after the fact, you know the pain. A real monitoring system in Fabric isn't just about catching problems, it's about designing each piece to actively support the others. When metrics, alerts, lineage, and automated recovery actually work as a unit, the data ecosystem starts to fix itself. That means fewer late-night pings and more time spent on new solutions, not root causes. If you want to get ahead, start with a foundation that grows alongside your workloads. For deeper strategies, stick around and dive in further.